Hello and welcome to a special Crystal Confab cooking edition where we're going to talk about our favorite seasoning, salt. Wait, hold on. Let's break it down. We're going to talk about halite, which is of course crystalline salt.
And this is
Bonnie?
a really interesting one because probably when it comes to crystals, Kyle, most people don't think of this as being a crystal, but it has some really great magical properties, doesn't it?
I mean, look at it. It is clearly crystalline. It means it's a crystal. It is what? Na2 plus. Oh my God, I can't remember the mineral formula for it.
Good
Sodium
old
chloride.
sodium chloride, NaCl, yeah?
There we go. The
Yeah.
brain went too silly. I'm thinking about food. It's rock salt. We can see it everywhere in each aisle of the shopping center. It's available to us. But when it grows in this crystalline form, there's something more to it. There's something more energetic that comes with it. And I think the purifying properties that we already know salt has, and I think if you're into a bit of old witchery, you will certainly know about the purifying work that salt brings. We're going to dive into so much more. And I'm really, really excited because I know, especially Nicholas, has a lot to uncover.
It is true. When we were brainstorming topics for this next series of rocks to talk about, I was real quick to throw halite in there. And full disclosure, it's kind of self-serving. One, it's weird, and I don't think people will have paid enough attention to it. And two, I have like 13 whole pages about the mineral halite in my next book, and I'm looking for lots of ways that I can kind of bring out these little hidden gems, no pun intended, at least for now. And salt was like the first thing that came to mind. I think it is such an underappreciated mineral. It occurs in so many parts of the earth. We find salt in a variety of different environments and deposits. They all tend to have one thing in common, in that liquid is no longer with us. Usually it forms by evaporation of mineral-rich liquids, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's talk about the history and folklore of salt. The need for salt in the human diet is precipitated by the invention of agriculture, because when humans live primarily off of hunted wild meat, there's enough salt in that to sustain them. But once you start farming things, you don't have the right balance of minerals and electrolytes in your food unless you go out of your way to find them. And so the earliest known salt production dates back approximately 8,000 years ago in what is now modern day Romania. Um, the development of we'll say salt production is a really good case of convergent cultural evolution. We find really early salt works in many different parts of the world, places that could not have shared one another's technology. They all kind of figured it out for themselves. Of course, there are natural salt deposits as well, that were probably in use long before then. But it is amazing that we find China, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Rome, all throughout Africa and the Americas, generating really sophisticated technology for the production of salt. Salt is, because it's such an important part of the human experience, it is literally in every cell of our bodies. And if we don't have it, we have problems. But because of that importance, it's taken on a lot of cultural, magical, ritual, spiritual significance over time. And the most obvious one is that we use salt to preserve things. We can dry stuff out. We can create brines or solutions that aren't friendly environments for harmful bacteria. And so we get this effect of preservation. And, we call this process of salting things like meat or veg and drying them out curing. We are literally curing them of the potential to cause illness. And that's where that root comes in linguistically. And so salt symbolically embodies a lot of these same principles. It draws out harmful energies. It cures us of patterns of imbalance. It has been used in medicine as well as in healing rituals for thousands upon thousands of years. There's great evidence that in, the Anglo-Saxon period in England, that the kind of folk healers, the leechcraft, if you will, they required a higher grade salt than anyone else would have in their homes, and they used it for medicinal as well as magical purposes. We even see salt as an important, we'll say, part of our pharmacopoeia today. How many of us have used a saltwater gargle with a sore throat, or flushed a wound with a saline solution? I mean, we still use it for medicine today. There's this kind of holiness about salt, the way it preserves things, that makes it sacred all throughout time. We see salt being sprinkled on sacrificial animals, being given as gifts to the gods, even in like modern Shinto practice today in Japan and among diasporic peoples. Offerings of salt are daily offerings, maybe sometimes weekly offerings on the kamidana, like the home shrine. And it's an important part. And then we get this fun little linguistic connection that links salt and money. So, of course, that word is salary. There's this really persistent myth that Roman soldiers were paid part of their wages in salt, called the salarium argentum. And while we can find a line item in some cases of salarium argentum, it was never actually people being paid in salt. It might have been an additional kind of stipend given to soldiers and to other officials, because salt production was centralized and was under the government's control at the time to ensure there was always salt for everybody because it was that important. But there's this link between salt and money. Salt prices benefit from being subsidized in this way from the Roman government. We see that kind of translating to how salt was offered to guests. If you were seated at a dinner party close to the salt cellar, it was a really good sign. Even fairly recently in Europe, that is still a big deal. If you are above the salt, if you are closer to the head of the table in the salt cellar, you are in good standing. And if you are below the salt, not so much. And this is often a reflection of people's social agency. In other words, how much money they had. And we use expressions like something is worth its salt. I'm going to go earn my salt. I'm headed to the salt mines. So there's this strong connection between the transformation of our labor into money, and salt is a reflection thereof. We can see that salt not only symbolizes wealth, but historically was used to attract it. And you can find over the top opulent salt cellars. I mean, go visit a museum full of ridiculous things. Go to the British Museum, go to the Louvre. You're going to find salt cellars that are worth more than I will make in several years of my life. And that was a way of exhibiting one's wealth and ensuring you were always drawing more to you. But even deeper than that, I find something really alchemical about salt. In order to end up with a piece like this orange halite that I've got here from upstate New York. This is from the Finger Lakes area, and there's actually an active salt mine there. I have a friend who works in said salt mine, in fact. He does IT support in a hole in the ground. Uh, but to get something solid like this, we have to take liquid and minerals and marry them together and then separate them again. And, as far back as, even Albert the Great, Albertus Magnus, in the 13th century, he described salt in his treatise on minerals in very alchemical terms. He describes it as something earthy, which is moistened and then mixed with something burnt. Elsewhere in his text, he describes this kind of connection to vapor or to humors or to the atmosphere. And so there is this almost poetic description of how we render salt, right? It is an earthy mineral, which we often collect from a brine, but only after adding heat and letting water evaporate into the air. And through this alchemical marriage of the elements, we see a transformation take place in salt. This alchemical connection is also seen in the myths that connect salt to both land and ocean, and is sometimes therefore used even in love magic. If it can marry solid land, dry land, and the aqueous waters, it can also help us marry with the person we hope to. And even in Rome, there's another little linguistic clue here. The state of just being smitten, like you've got it bad for someone, was a term salax from salt. It actually means salted. And that is where we get our modern day word of salacious. When someone's got some salacious gossip, you're going to be up in someone's business, probably about their personal life in very intimate ways. And salt is woven through all of these little patches of history and culture and language and society. And it is truly a magical mineral, if only we'll give it the time of day.
Mm. Nicholas, what are some of the you've got some beautiful orange highlight there. What are some of the other colors that it comes in?
Name a color and salt comes in it. We have really beautiful examples in the world of pink, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, black, white, gray, brown, red. I'm probably missing some. Whether you've got trace microorganisms and ancient organic matter like we find in our Himalayan pink and orange salt. You can have volcanic minerals that give us red and black salt. You can have traces of copper, which could be green or blue depending on the state. So it is such a fun mineral because it can come in such great variety. And it's a cubic crystal. That beautiful example that Kyle was holding up earlier shows some great hexahedral surfaces in there. They're often thoroughly etched because it is created from solution. It's often subject to being dissolved, at least partially in that process. So you get those skeletal or hopper faces. Sometimes you get really stark, clean cubes, and sometimes they're all etched away. And they're so exciting to see in the wild.
I love that there is such a history with salt, and the really exciting thing is we can continue as magical workers to use salt in various ways around our home. So I want to take you on a bit of a journey with a bit of kitchen witchery in that way. Now we know, as Nicholas mentioned before, that salt is really great for cleansing. Now, there may be times in your life, the gods forbid, where you may not have the right crystals you need wherever you may be. So you may want to, you may be staying at a holiday home, or you may be, out and about, and you want to do something kind of spontaneous and magical. This is where salt can be a real asset. So we can sprinkle it around or place it around an area as a bit of an energy cleanser for helping to purify the space. If you're casting a magical circle, it can be kind of part of that ritual as well. But you can also pair it with something that's just as common and you'll find in the kitchen, and that's pepper. Now, pepper being black mainly works like your black tourmaline or your black crystals. So you actually have a cleanser and a protector that you can pair together. Now, we can sprinkle these around the exterior of a house. If you want to do it inside your house, you're going to have to sweep it up and vacuum it up later. But these different things can be used in this type of way. Now, I will say, as a bit of a caveat, when we go to the supermarket, there are different types of salt. And if we're working with the salt on a magical kind of perspective, you want to be looking for a pure salt rather than something that's kind of been treated or has anti-caking agents and different things in it as well. The other thing just to be mindful is that too much salt in soil is not good for plants. So don't go pouring salt all over your garden as a protective amulet, because you'll protect your garden from evil, but you won't protect all your plants from dying. So just be mindful of that. Now, it does have this really quite cleansing energy. And if you do have a halite crystal, it's definitely one you want to keep with the rest of your crystals. It's kind of, think of it a bit like it works like selenite, helping to cleanse the other crystals and keep that space cleansed as well. But we also see, the rise in popularity of the good old Himalayan lamps, which are those orange salt lamps, which are really amazing as well. Now, to get them to work properly, you do actually need to generate a little bit of heat. Sometimes people put LED lights in there because it makes that beautiful orange glow that creates a nice atmosphere, but that's not going to produce the actual effect where negative ions are being released. So what negative ions are, they are, I guess, particles that we find in the atmosphere that we often find around natural environments. Now, if we're near the ocean or near a waterfall, there'll be, I think it was about 10 million negative ions per square meter. Whereas if you go into an office block in the city, you may find 10 negative ions in each square meter as well. By bringing things like Himalayan salt lands into the space, it also releases negative ions, which counteract, of course, positive ions that are released by electronics and different things like this. So this is not just kind of a spiritual aspect, but there's a bit of, we can create a spiritual atmosphere or a healthier atmosphere by having these salt lamps around our house. Now, orange and red halite is also associated with abundance. So if you want to be really, really particular, apart from just placing different places to create a nice atmosphere, Feng Shui is not my strong point, but you could look at where your abundance or your finance places are in your house, and putting a orange Himalayan salt lamp in that space is said to invoke more good fortune, abundance, and opportunities to bring money into your life as well. Because of salt's cleansing aspect, it's really, really great for the mind. So it's a great one to keep on a desk if you tend to get distracted, if you work in a work environment where there's going to be a whole lot of distractions or too much salacious gossip and not enough work being done, you might want to pop it there. Or if you tend to work late in the night. I know last night I actually had a lot of work to do and I was working till about 9:30. Having salt around is a really great way of helping just to still and settle the mind, because you don't want to kind of still be thinking about work when you get into bed. This can also work with pets, and it can also work with kids, and putting it around the house in a careful way that, no one's going to be licking your crystals, but you can do that to help settle the mind as well. Final fun fact that I have to share with you as well is, that astrology is one of my things that I really love. And I've been diving in and even sharing with you about all these dwarf planets that are out beyond, floating around with Pluto, that have just been starting to be unveiled and uncovered since the year 2000. One of these is Salacea. Now, she is the wife of Neptune or Poseidon, and her name, that Salacea, does come and has an origin with salt, and so it's connecting with her as well. She is actually really great at helping us connect with our more sensual side, our sexuality and intimacy. And it's interesting in this world where we have to be very mindful of respecting people's boundaries and so on, that almost if we come, date back 50 years ago where there was a lot more freedom in sexual expression and so on, Salacea helps us to maybe swing the balance back into that way of we need to respect people's boundaries, but we don't need to be scared of intimacy when, it's consensual and so on, and to embrace that physical intimacy. So we could even use salt in the bedroom for not even stealing the mind, but also helping us to take away sexual frigidity and fears, different things like that as well. So it's a really powerful one to use around your home. Just be careful where you're using it, so you're not, harming any plants, because we don't want to lose our beautiful plants. But it's been used throughout history, as Nicholas shared, and I think it's still got lots of uses that we can use today. What about yourself, Kyle? Do you feel this one can still be used magically as well?
Absolutely. For me, I found it really, really personally very useful. And I'll show off this beautiful piece again because I love its formation. It's almost like it's got a couple of stages of growth that you can see, the really cubic aspect and then a little bit rougher here. This is from California specifically, San something or other that I can't remember the name of exactly. And I know that it's produced, it's like every couple of years they harvest. It's not yearly, it's not all the time they allow the salt to grow. It's one of those things, it takes time to grow, it takes time to produce. So it gives us space and time. When I want to work with something that's going to give me a bit of space, a bit of relaxation, a bit of softening, a little bit of drawing out the moisture that salt does to meat, right? It helps to draw out the emotion that's maybe superfluous. It helps to draw out the noise that's superfluous. It helps to draw out that which is extraneous and is distracting, as Adam sort of touched on. It really aids us in pulling out so we can cleanse ourselves as well. When we use it for our own emotional work, our own energy work, we can realize we have more time than we think, so we can actually process some feeling and some emotion. We can allow ourselves to sit with our emotions and our feelings so that they can come out and be released instead of holding them in and creating more tension, creating more frustration, creating more not good emotions and compounding that energy. I found it really useful for that. Take a breath, release, let it go, give yourself some space. It takes sunlight to create it, or heat, or, the process of removing that liquid. So it allows us to understand that if you build up emotion, it's only going to come out anyway. So why not release it in a healthy way? Why not process your emotions in a better way? Give yourself more space and more time to just feel what's happening. I find, especially the pink halite, this really beautiful soft pink, has this ability to bring your feet into the earth, open your mind up to the sky, and sort of connect the heart in between and bring that marriage of, spirit and solidity, your spirit and your physical human person together, because it can be very disparate. We can kind of separate our spiritual self and our human self. We can become very compartmentalized, but it's all together, right? It's all interwoven. So when you allow yourself to be in your feels, you can actually be healthier, happier, a more balanced version of yourself. And I found my connection to halite deepened without it being necessarily in my hands. So I went on a trip with my husband to the north west side of Australia. We went through a couple of places, one of them being Port Gregory. Port Gregory has a huge pink lake that is a big salt lake, and around it, it's all crystalline salt. There's some wire that's been put into the middle of the lake that is crystallized that says the pink lake. It is stunning when you see that salt pink brininess in person. It stops you. Like, it really stopped me in my tracks. It made me go, this is really, really bizarre, but it's beautiful and it's interesting. And then when we went further north to Shark Bay, we visited the stromatolites, and that only grows in hypersaline water, right? Like, nothing else can exist there except for the stromatolites. And there was this, like, I wanted to be in the water. You're not allowed to, but I just wanted to be in the water, in that salty water with that energy. It felt so purifying being next to it, walking above it. And then where we stayed in Shark Bay, the bay is really saline anyway. I am not a person that floats in water. I'm not buoyant. I am dense and I sink. I floated in that water. I was able to actually be buoyant, and it was because of the salt and the heat. And it just proves to us that, like, we're allowed to be passionate, we're allowed to be excited, we're allowed to feel, we're allowed to have space for all of that. It actually helps us to be a more balanced version of ourselves. And I think emotionally, if you were really maybe feeling a bit blocked, feeling a little bit stuck, feeling a little bit like, how do I move forward? Maybe it's because there's something that needs to be released, something that needs to sort of be cleansed, and holding a bit of space with some halite could be really useful for that.
Amazing. Now, obviously, considering that it is formed from like the evaporation of liquids, do we need to be careful when we've got halite about where we're keeping it in the house? I know sometimes there's a lot of humidity in the air, or maybe a bit of a damp room. What can happen with that, Kyle?
Melting. It will become counter seasoning.
So you've obviously got some beautiful pieces there. What do you do to make sure that they're always kept in their good form?
So my pieces are just kept in a room upstairs. Our upstairs is less humid than downstairs, so they have no issues. They've sort of been out in the open. The only thing that does happen and will always happen, especially with this type of halite, is it will fade. That is just a natural part of the process. They come out a really beautiful, often really vibrant pink color. And the fading process is normal and natural. So don't be alarmed when that happens. And these were a couple of years old. They were much pinker when I got them. That's just part of having them out. If I had them in a cabinet, it might control the color a little bit more, but I'm not about that. And I have salt lamps as well. They're downstairs where it is humid. They just stay on at least, for me, 24 hours a day, but at least 18 hours a day. Keeps that heat through the salt so that it doesn't actually melt. This is a problem that happens a lot, especially in Perth, because we are a humid city being coastal. A lot of people, and Nicholas will understand this being from Florida, if the salt lamp isn't on for at least 18 hours a day, so the salt stays warm, that's when it melts. That will always happen. So it needs to have the globe that warms it, and it needs to be on all the time. I have 4 throughout my house. They are on 24 hours a day, and I've never had a melting issue in 15 years. So that's just one of those things that we have figured out through trial and error, I think.
Yeah, I remember in my younger years, couldn't work out why there was water sitting under one of my Himalayan salt lamps that I'd turn off every night. So yeah, just keep it on 24/7. They're beautiful night lights as well because of that beautiful orange glow anyway. So if you need to get up and go to the bathroom or someone needs to make it through the house for some reason, it's a really nice one. We have it near our front entry so we can see what we're doing when we open up the door. Nicholas, any other care or point you'd make about halite and salt?
Yeah, I mean, so at my day job, this is one of those conservation issues. We have difficulty putting it on display, but it's also really valuable as an educational material and making that connection to the mineral world that, many people don't think about. So we just always have a constantly melting cube of halite in our elements case, so we can at least have it there. But otherwise, what we have to do is keep them in climate controlled environments. We're in the process of getting a new system put in that'll take place pretty late in the year, but it will allow us to control the humidity in the building. Otherwise, seal them, or have them maybe not out for view. I have drawers that I keep a lot of minerals in. I have those silica gel packets in any of the drawers that have minerals that we need to worry about their moisture levels. Halite is hygroscopic, it will pull moisture out of the air. It doesn't even have to get wet, it just pulls it out of the air. Other things like pyrite also benefit from the silica gel packets. They don't pull moisture out of the air, they just react to it and decay. So I have like a rotating supply of them at work. We have jumbo ones that we can actually microwave to recharge. You have to make sure they're microwave safe. And then you have to try not to kill the antique microwave, like I recently did, because they take quite a long time to dehydrate. And having little, you can get inexpensive moisture indicators as well that just show you when it's time to change those things out and just pop them in the drawer with your minerals. And that's a really good option for you as well.
I love that tip. There's always those little moisture absorbers that come in different products and things like that. And for me, I'm normally just tossing them in the bin because I can't see any use for them. So we can put some with our crystals now. So thank you for that. Now, you also mentioned as we wrap up that you have 13 pages devoted to salt in your new book. You didn't tell us what the title of the book is or where we can get it. Can you do a bit of shameless self-promotion so everyone can get their hot little hands on it?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. So the book is called The Witching Stones, the lore and craft of the essential crystals, gemstones, and minerals to empower your magic, which is a really long subtitle, but that's how that works sometimes. So salt is chapter 5. It's going to give you all of that lore plus a whole lot more. It's got some of the geology of salt, more of the kind of ancient history of its use, a handful, it's like 4 or 5 magical practices as well, things for healing and consecration and for money, as well as a recipe for the black salt, or sometimes called witch's salt. But the book comes out in the US very soon, about a month from when we are recording. As we record, we're about 5 days out from printed copies arriving in the distribution center. It will take a little bit longer to send them far away, for example, to my friends in Australia, but I'm excited for this project in a way that I don't think I have been in a long time. And as of right now, you can pre-order from any of your favorite retailers. And if you want to support an indie bookstore, if you say, "Hey, there's this weird crystal book by this weird crystal guy," I'm sure they will order it for you.
That's amazing. So probably it will be available around October 2025.
Yes, October 6th, 2025 in the US. It'll be November in the UK, and I think a little bit later than that to get down under.
What could anyone else want for Christmas rather than that book? So I think the whole family should get the Witching Stones this year. Perfect. Well, we hope that, and I must say about the book as well, I got to have a little bit of a preview of it. It's what I love about it. There are so many crystal books out there, but what I love about this one in particular of yours, Nicholas, is that you've got some regular crystals, but you've got some really unusual ones there, and it's just the we see it in the podcast every week with the knowledge and the lore that you have, and you've really put so much into it. And it's not like any other crystal book that's just like, oh yeah, this is Amethyst is good for relaxing and citrine's good for abundance, whoop-de-doo. So it's anyone who's passionate about going at least to the second level of understanding crystals, it's definitely a book worth having, for sure. I love it. So can't wait for it. We have explored some really interesting things over the last couple of weeks. Things that you probably didn't think were or have sitting in your crystal collection, like your diamonds and your salt. Now, what are we going to talk about next week? Well, you'll have to wait 1 week to find out. We'll be back then with another confab about crystals. Until then, take care and blessed be.